Right. What ends up happening is once they start centralizing control by having their allies in tech ban people, well, they win elections. Donald Trump loses. And then the result of this is terrifying. The New York Post reports U.S. expresses unwavering support for Ukraine amid Russian military movements. The New York Times reports fighting escalates in eastern Ukraine, signaling the end to another ceasefire. Ukraine and Russia issued statements Tuesday noting the worsening of a conflict that has been on a low simmer for years with countless ceasefires. It's picking up. And what's fascinating about this is that before Donald Trump, this was a major move by the existing U.S. establishment, intelligence agencies, the military-industrial complex, gaining control, getting Western influence into Ukraine. Yeah. And then creating this major conflict. Don't get me wrong. Putin has a lot to account for in terms of his responsibility here, the seizing of Crimea and the assistance he's providing to the separatists in the East. But this is the big war. This is, or I should say, this is one of the big conflicts having a lot to do with the Gazprom natural gas monopoly. Europe is faced with very high energy prices. They wanted to get a pipeline from, it's called the Qatar-Turkey pipeline. Long story short, all of these pieces come together in really interesting ways. In 2009, this is reported by The Guardian, the U.S. wanted to destabilize Syria because Syria was refusing U.S. interests, refusing to allow them to build a pipeline that would bring natural gas into Europe. Well, Syria said outright, Russia is our ally and we will not harm their business interests with their gas monopoly. Convenient for us, there was a civil war, a revolution, and conflict and attempts to destabilize Syria occurred, and U.S. interests are there even right now. Reports that the U.S. is moving more in. So it's unsurprising to me that we're a couple months out of Joe Biden becoming president, and all of a sudden Ukraine lights back up.
Of course it's not. I mean, of course it's not surprising. I mean, I think anyone who's even remotely red-pilled understands perfectly well that there's these international networks where they work together, and Joe Biden was their guy. And here's what really bothers me about Joe Biden. This is, I think, the worst thing you can say about him, and this is something that's not even really particularly controversial. If you, in my opinion, correctly regarded the Iraq war as a mistake, right? Let's suppose I was a chef. I've used this metaphor before, and I accidentally undercook some chicken and someone dies, right? Like, God forbid. As not only would I feel enormous guilt, I'm like, okay, I need to take mechanisms. If I'm going to still remain a chef, which I don't know that I would do because I killed someone, God forbid, I'm going to take steps to make sure this kind of thing never happens again, because this is so beyond the pale and inappropriate. I don't know how many people died in the Iraq war, Iraqis and Americans alike. If Joe Biden says this was a mistake and you feel guilt over it, tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of innocent lives being hundreds of thousands of innocent lives, or maybe not even innocent lives, but I don't think everyone should be killed. I would be like, all right, I'm going to make sure this doesn't happen again. I'm going to staff my White House with people who don't think this way. I'm going to make steps to kind of put fail-safes in place. The urine in his Depends wasn't dry before he was sending arms to Syria. Yeah, this is very disturbing, and I gotta tell you, you see these photos of these hippies in the 60s with the soldiers, and this girl hippie puts the daisy in the barrel of
girl
his rifle.
hippie.
Well, there's that very famous photo.
Yeah,
and as a kid, I thought, what an idiot. And now I think, you know what? She's not the idiot. Because she's really, even though she's maybe naive and not particularly sophisticated in her thoughts, she's like, you know what? This is wrong. And we are all raised to think that war is a last resort, but it's treated as a first priority by the state. And this is one of the biggest reasons I'm an anarchist. War is so glorified. And even when it happens, like, everyone's just like, eh. And I'm like, do you understand what this means? Bombs from the sky and children and innocent kids?
The truth is, they don't understand because they haven't experienced
it. Yeah, you're right. I don't even understand it because, right.
You know what it is to me? The United States is the capital city in the Hunger Games, where they're all totally oblivious to the suffering of the outside districts who are being beaten and forced to fight to the death. And they're like, so what? And they're drinking Ipecac to vomit and keep eating until the war comes to them. You see, I believe it was the CIA that referred to... I'll keep the language light, okay? The CIA said actions in the Middle East resulted in blowback.
Yeah.
That when we were going over there, meddling in governments, arming rebel groups, people got mad at us over there, and they brought it back over here. And all of a sudden, the people in the capital are shocked. What's happening? Why is it happening? Don't worry. They just hate you for your freedoms.
Yeah.
Some simple answer. So you get these people blindly and ignorantly just cheering and dancing for the war machine. And then when it comes back to them, they pat you on the head and say, oh, it's because of your freedoms. Don't worry. Not realizing that, dude, maybe if we just minded our own business a little bit and worked on ourselves, people wouldn't be doing these things. Now, there are some serious challenges, though. China's expansion into many of these areas, their authoritarianism, they're trying to take over, and it seems like they're doing a heck of a good job of it, which is scary to me. Because if they end up as the global power, I don't like the idea of them gaining influence over us, but it seems like it's happening either way.
But the thing is, they're not gaining influence over us through militarily. Right. They're gaining influence over like the same way the Soviet Union did, through surreptitious means, through intelligence, and through journalism, and getting the right people who are kind of fans of theirs to some extent, or at least neutral, in the right positions of power. That's the insidious part. It's not China is not going to fight the U.S. maybe through a proxy war like the Korean War, but it's not going to be like a World War III, God forbid. But they are going to do mechanisms to make sure that their opinions are presented as unarguable with in the States.
Shout out to The Fourth Turning, which you're familiar with, I believe, yes?
I'm not.
Strauss-Howe Generational Theory?
No.
So this is book about 25 years ago.
Yes, look, Lydia's shocked.
I'm shook.
Yeah,
I'm really surprised that Michael hadn't heard of that.
Fascinating.
Every 20 years is a new season, and every 80 years we go through a major upheaval.
Oh, God, I hate stuff like this. Yep. It is, oh, my God.
You don't like it,
This is like astrology.
Sure.
Interesting.
80 years ago, we had World War II. 80 years before that, we had a civil war. 80 years before that, we had a revolutionary war.
Okay, and look, every president who was inaugurated, it was 1789, 1865, 1933, and would have been 2005. Where was that? 72 years in between. It was Washington, Lincoln, FDR. So it would have been George Bush's second term. So yeah, sometimes these patterns appear, but to claim that they're kind of inevitable, I really reject that.
I'm not saying they're inevitable.
No, but if the implication is that these cycles tend to repeat, I think this is the kind of thing where you get the conclusion and you force the data to fit it.
Well, perhaps.
Possibly.
They wrote this book 20 years ago, and they did predict a certain amount of things, and a certain amount of things they got wrong, because that's typically the case when someone's speculating. But the general idea is, it's actually really simple to explain. Strong men make good times. Strong men make good times make weak men make hard times make strong men. Have you heard that before?
I have.
The general idea is that we've seen it with generational wealth. It typically lasts 3 generations. The individual who came from nothing and worked really hard and understood what gumption was, starts a business, makes a lot of money.
Sure.
Then they have a kid. The kid grows up.
Yeah, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of the general idea, that we're now entering this period where you have a bunch of very entitled people who simultaneously complain about the police, but then demand that the state be given more power over many other aspects of their lives. There's a lack of logic in a lot of what their decision making is. I digress. The point is, according to this book, we are entering the winter period, which should end with some kind of calamity. But here's the issue. The problem is that people tend to, and it's not always incorrect, they base the future off of the past. We should look to the past to try and understand what will happen in the future, but there's many things you can't predict because of a change in methodology and technologies.
Yes.
To clarify, as many people think Strauss-Howe generational theory is predicting a massive world war with China, Strauss-Howe generational theory says that each war is fought with the most powerful weapons of the time. The question we rose on the show is, and that might be social media.
No, it's love.
I think it's lasers from space.
Yes, Care Bear Stare is the most powerful weapon. No, what I mean is, a lot of people assume it's nuclear weapons because World War II.
Sure.
It's been 80 years.
Yeah.
The mind control, social media manipulation, and propaganda is infinitely more powerful right now. You can take over a country without firing a single bullet. You can convince the people to cheer for you as you storm their beaches.
I disagree, because when, what's his name, he wrote the book Propaganda. And there's this is in the
Bernays?
There's Bernays' book, and then there's Walter Lippmann's book, Public Opinion. Those are the two. Those were written in the 20s and 30s. It's a lot easier to propagandize. Look at Hitler. Look at Stalin. It is a lot easier to propagandize a population without access to independent media. It's a lot hard. Look at FDR. Look at Lincoln. Look at the Confederacy. It's a lot easier to have control of that population than it is now, as counterintuitive as it sounds.
It's a lot easier to disrupt a nation's power centers with independent media than it is.
Correct.
So what the most powerful weapon is of today is not firing a nuke. It's China getting a bunch of sock puppets and bots across social media to undermine cohesion in the United States. I'm
all for undermining cohesion in the United States, as you know. I'm for breaking this country up, so that sounds like a good thing to me. I'm just going to take a step back about this book. There's a book I recommend everyone read by Arthur Herman, who's an amazing historian. His first book was called The Idea of Decline in Western History. And what he goes through is every 20 years, there's a new sect that says we're at the end of history. it's very millenarianism in the Christian sense. Like it's all going to come down. Get your bootstraps ready, and whether it's the Hitler version or whether it's the Greta Thunberg version, it's always right now. It's the end times, and somehow it never is the Armageddon. So I'm very skeptical of these books, where the conclusion always is now is when things are going to hit the fan. It's always now when things are about to hit the fan.
Yeah, I felt for that in 2006.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.